Excellent. So welcome to TAD Summit Innovator Interviews. So I'm going to be talking with Marlon Bowser, who's the CEO of HTK, who's all about data-driven customer experience and loyalty. Marlon, welcome.
Well, thanks, Alan. Great to be here.
So straight up, I guess the first question I had on the agenda was getting straight down to why did you found HTK, but maybe preface that with, please introduce HTK. Then, as a multi-part question, why did you found it? And, how has the company evolved? Because you're quite a few years old now.
Oh, crikey. I mean, I don't want to take the entire hour on that first question, but just to give a bit of context, I mean, you know me, I'm an engineer at heart. So I did my degree in computer science and maths at Manchester from 89 to 92, which was a great era for music as well, a great place to be. And when I left university, I had no idea what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I started moping around the house. And in the end, mother said, Marlon, actually, she spoke to my twin brother, Justin, and said, Justin, please find Marlon a job. and Justin was working at BT Labs in Martlesham, which you'll be very familiar with.
Yes.
And he hooked me up with an interview, actually the only interview I've ever had for a job, with a guy called Bob Carpenter.
Yep.
In the Advanced Speech Research and Technology division in the main lab block. So I, long story short, I ended up working as a contractor at BT Labs for the best part of 5 years, working on some of the world's first deployments of advanced speech technology, and that's speech recognition and text-to-speech synthesis. So I spent my time collecting audio utterances and building speech recognition models and endpoint detecting and running through Fourier transforms and noise with dogs barking in the background. We had Peter Cochrane driving down the A12 in his car to get some samples with noise in the background, and it was a fantastic, the dawn of speech technology, and that was great. And in 1996, BT made a fundamental change, as telcos do, hence our conversation today, that it was going to stop a lot of its internal R&D and outsource a lot to Philips.
Yep.
At the end of the day, I think they were fed up kicking their own ass when things didn't get to market, and much better to blame somebody else, i.e. Philips.
Yep.
So a lot of the speech technology department shut down. And what I was encouraged to do at that time, actually by the guys in BT Consulting, was to carry on.
Mm-hmm.
We were working at the time with Aculab on a new voice platform, and there was real potential for it because it was rapid to market. It was quite agile on what you could do with it. So again, a story not many people know, Alan, which I'm happy to share with you. At the time, as HTK, we did a commercial deal with BT to take on a lot of the IP they developed in speech technology. To commercially exploit it and to onward develop it. So we took a lot of that IP into HTK. We carried on building our own voice platform to deploy that speech technology. And that was really the reason. The contracting market at BT kind of dried up for tech. There was still a need in the market, so we chose to come at it at a different angle. One of our first projects there was actually with the British Broadcasting Corporation, the good old BBC.
Yeah, that's right.
And I'll tell you, because it's a funny example of speech tech, which is saying it's become very, very popular now and very on vogue. But this was going on back in the early 90s. And the BBC had a particular challenge that when their newscasters and sports commentators go onto the telly or the radio, they have to be able to pronounce the names of either sporting celebrities or people in the news that day. And amazing how many people couldn't pronounce Mikhail Gorbachev's name correctly. And certainly when it came down to a football squad with a lot of foreign names in there, there was complaints coming through. So what we did is actually build, we would get a database coming through every week of people in the news or in sports that week, and we would synthesize it in the Queen's own English, how to pronounce it. And because there was lots of foreign names involved, actually we extended the normal, UK English or even American English is made up of 46 different phonemes. different sounds, the subword units of speech.
Yeah.
And we extended that, I think, to 54 phonemes to include the hon of French,
yeah,
you know, a hon. And someone's in Arabic as well, they have like noises.
Yeah.
To be able to have an English synthesizer pronouncing foreign words correctly.
Yep.
And I'll tell you what, Alan, what was astonishing, we delivered that in, I think, 2007, 2008, something like that. I actually had the BBC approach me a few weeks ago because they wanted some support on it. It's been in there in production. They still use it today.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, and it's, you know, a great example of voice technology.
Yeah, speech synthesis. I mean, it's still dealing with multi-language issues today. I mean, that has not been solved in any way.
Absolutely. And I think this was a world first in terms of synthesizers can do different languages, but getting a synthesizer to pronounce foreign words in a certain language was quite interesting. But anyway, you know, so we went through a period of doing, you know, speech technology stuff, and also we were close to BT.
Yeah.
We put in place a deal with Vodafone. They resold and still do some of our software. So I got to know the telecoms arena quite well. And we had our voice infrastructure hosted with Colt, City of London Telecom. So we got talking to those guys about innovation and the lack of it. And in HTK, we went through a period, and I think it's when we first met, Alan.
Yep.
You're looking at telecom application development and, you know, open infrastructure, architecture, things like the Jane Slee. We got talking to OpenCloud and others in terms of actually how you can develop new products and services for a telco to commercialize to compete with the over-the-top vendors. And I think that theme is clearly, you know, still going on. And we'll come on to RCS later. But,
absolutely. And from the speech tech, how did the focus change into customer experience and loyalty?
Yeah, well, again, that's probably the second chapter of HTK. So we had some early traction in the public sector. Back in 2002 and 2003, we ran in consortium with BT and Oracle the UK's first electoral voting by telephone.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, so that was interesting actually, in terms of people could sit in the comfort of their home armchair, pick up their phone and vote in the local elections.
Yep.
A great project. And actually very successful. Wasn't perpetuated for various reasons, but we got involved with that. We also ran the national police portal, police.uk, which was the main point of contact between the police and the public to report crime, awareness of crime, and advice on prevention of crime, and also to collect information from the public about crime, intelligence gathering, all that kind of stuff. And that required us to build some tools. So we basically started off with, you know, some web forms where the public could fill out, my cat's gone missing, whatever. And we would detect that it was a non-serious crime, you know, rather than an urgent crime. And actually that was very early kind of context analysis in terms of, if we think someone's talking about bomb, death, terror, threat, then you forward them to 999. This is not the service for you. This predated 101 and so forth.
Oh, right.
And also for the police to communicate with the public. So it was a CRM database with lots of information about Joe Citizen. And we built some tools so the police could use that. And this was not just the Metropolitan Police, but pretty much, I think at one point, every single police force or police service was using our software. And about half of them are today. So they could go onto a website and they could draw an area on a map and target people in the area, perhaps who have reported a hate crime previously, who are old and vulnerable, or whatever they might be. So it was an early example of a CRM database to hold some really quite sensitive information, to be able to segment that database and use it for communications, outbound and inbound by voice, SMS, and email were the main channels, and obviously web forms coming back in. So we built this, and really that's going back, I say, to the early noughties, and it was one of the first examples of software as a service in production at the time. So that was our first foray into building a platform with a web user interface, and the public sector is still very successful for us. We provide the flood warning dissemination system in Scotland. We serve DEFRA and I say a lot of the UK police service. But there came a point in 2007 when, kind of recession kicked in and budgets were cut, that the public sector market dried up somewhat. So we thought, well, crikey, what other organizations would need a software platform to be able to communicate with people in a smart, data-driven way across channels.
Yep.
Be able to use that data, analyze it, whatever, and visualize it. And we thought, well, you know, marketing and customer service automation was a growing area.
Oh yeah.
So we kind of took a sideways move into that marketing and customer service automation space.
Gotcha.
And again, we were quite successful there. You know, then some other vendors came out doing similar things, and it was actually in the last sort of few years we chose to specialize a little bit.
Okay.
You know, we're all boffins here at HTK Towers, and I think what's interesting, Alan, is it's very easy to send an SMS to somebody, but it's a case of who you send it to, and actually what do they think about that. And then when you get into the whole area of looking at sentiment, of looking at what motivates people, at the end of the day, Alan, in the commercial world we live in, I am a firm believer that putting smiles on customer faces puts money in the till.
Exactly.
And it really is as simple as that. So that's a case of how can you get somebody smiling? How can you actually solve a problem they have? How can you show that you not just, you know, empathize, but I think one of the most positive drivers of human behavior is recognition.
Yes.
We all want to feel recognized as individuals. When you walk into your local bar and they say, part of the usual, Alan, it makes you feel recognized, remembered, appreciated, and valued.
Yes.
And as consumers, we want to feel pleased, valued, and cared for by any organization we choose to do business with. And I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that you can't always talk to somebody, and sometimes you don't want to talk to somebody, and sometimes the person isn't particularly helpful. But when you have, you know, when you do need to talk to an organization, say talk in the loosest sense, how can you help make that a rewarding experience and actually use that to further somebody's appreciation of your brand, you know, at that kind of emotional level.
Exactly.
You know, if somebody feels pissed off, anxious, frustrated, angry, annoyed, these are all negative emotions that tend to push customers out of the door.
Yes.
If you can make someone feel valued, pleased, cared for, supported, then those are positive emotions. So our job in this sort of broader loyalty context is how you can maximize the opportunity to give somebody a positive experience, which will generate some kind of loyalty towards the brand. Exactly. Yes, your product's got to be right, the service has got to be right, the price has got to be right, but once those things are in place, it's then about how you can elevate that emotional connection by making people feel happier more of the time and pissed off less of the time. And I think that's where data and analytics and engagement and content all come through, and also the timeliness of that communication.
Exactly.
You know, a pointing question, you know, it's very easy to build a telecom service where on somebody's checkout from a hotel, they get an email or text message saying, rate your stay.
Yep.
How good was it? And you expect it was a magnificent stay. Things were perfect. They'll give you a 5-star rating on TripAdvisor. But I'll tell you what, that's not always the case. What happens if when somebody checks out in the morning, they do talk to somebody, there was no hot water, they missed their alarm call, they're grumpy, they're frustrated, they're angry, and there was a problem in the stay. The last thing you want is send them a text saying, how was it? Tell us how great you were.
Where's the 0-star?
The last thing you want is say rates on TripAdvisor.
Yeah.
What you do want to do is say, okay, the person's checked out, but what's the context around that? The context is they expressed negative sentiment this morning, or it might just be the first time they stayed with your resort and actually, or your hotel. And rather than saying rate us,
exactly,
you might want to find out a bit more.
Yeah.
So our job is to get some kind of event. Something has happened or something has not happened. The absence of an event, put some context around that, in order to enable some kind of, you know, relevant contextual engagement.
Exactly.
And with the customer, whether that be outbound or inbound. I also think, Alan, that, you know, a lot of organizations do transactional comms quite well. They can trigger something off the back of something, a parcel delivery or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And actually, it's amazing how few of those transactional emails or SMS have an option to reply.
Yes.
And I think, you know, turning one-way dialogues into a two-way conversation is something else brands need to embrace.
Yes.
And I think the tools are now there to do it in terms of when opening up those channels, and be able to look at things like what they're talking about, what's the context,
Exactly.
what's the what are the entities they're talking about, what's the sentiment around that, to be able to either automate a response or escalate it internally. And I say, back to the hotel example, what you want to do if it's somebody's first stay, they're a business traveler, they stayed in an expensive room, they weren't happy. What you want, what they want, what we would want as consumers is a personal letter from the manager saying, "Here, we might let you down. How can we make that right?"
Exactly.
And I think this is what we do as HTK, is looking at the opportunity to combine data and analysis with engagement to put smiles on faces, that puts money in the till. Actually measure the success of doing that.
Exactly, making it measurable. And I mean, you've got coming out soon, of course, the Horizon CX flow, which is all about this contextual two-way engagement across a range of communication channels. And you've mentioned some of them already in terms of the web forms, SMS, voice, and it's exploding. We've got more and more communication channels. I'm interested in your experiences of using these different channels. What are their strengths, weaknesses? What's your preferences? How do you recommend your clients in terms of managing this very complex communication problem?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an engineer at heart, but I'm also quite pragmatic and common-sensey.
Yeah.
And I think, for me, the common sense around channels is, for each channel, you kind of have an expectation. If I send you a letter in the post, I might expect to get a response within a week or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
If I send an email to you, I might expect to get a response in a day or 2 days. If I send you a text message, or even you make a comment on FaceWeb, you kind of expect now brands to get back to you within a few minutes.
Yeah.
If you place a voice call, that's a real-time channel. You expect it to be answered really quite quickly and get down to business quickly. So I think different channels have a different
cadence,
time and a different place, depending on the urgency of the content and the expectations of the customer to get a reply. So I think it's blending those things appropriately. Now, of course, different people have different preferences. I'm a complete closeted introvert, and I'd much rather not talk to anybody if I can get away with it. I'm actually quite a big fan of email and actually of web chat. I love web chat, provided I don't get asked 3 times to identify myself, which is often the case.
Yes.
And I think, put in context, how can we help you today, sir? Well, look in the frickin' CRM. I've had this chat with you 3 times already this morning. You can probably guess why I'm contacting you. Please have a look. Tell me you understand. And I think that kind of context, I think, is more important than channel, Alan.
Yes.
It's when you get through to somebody or even to the machine, do they know, or can they preempt what you might be contacting them about? Show they're on top of the case, they're on it.
Yeah.
On it like a bonnet. And I think that's the more important thing than channel, is actually what the utility of that channel is to get something done.
Exactly.
And I think any channel you introduce has to have that kind of mantra at its heart. Is this channel going to be effective at resolving the kind of issues or answering the kind of inquiries that our customers might have? And actually, is it aware of what's going on other channels? Which comes down to integration. Because no better way to annoy somebody than to have a lack of awareness on web chat of what they've done on the phone that morning, or vice versa.
Exactly, or what they've done over a series of days. I mean, like Verizon, I use their chat just like you. It's non-real time, so I can be doing something else while I'm just dealing with a problem, and an intermittent problem we'd be having with internet access. And I did it once, and it took too long, so I gave up. And then a couple of weeks later, I tried again, and it's just the same process they take you through. It got escalated to a real person. Same process again. There was just no, contextual awareness of the problem. And then like an hour, because it's Verizon, they love to use their customers' time. Later you get to, you might need to buy a new modem. Oh, here's a link so you can upgrade and keep the crappy plan you're on and pay more for it, and it was just like, oh, of course there's a follow-up, and guess how they follow up? Even though my preference has been text all the way through, they try to call me in real time. And it's like, you're not going to get my time. So you just put it to voicemail. And it's like, this is a callback for, a survey. And it's just, again, multi-channel. And I think the thing you said that I think is very powerful is context is more important than channel. And
Yes.
that, to me, I think, is the challenge we're facing, because context is difficult. It requires bringing lots of different pieces of data and interactions together to help either the bot or the agent or just the automated reply. So, how are you defining context in, when you're helping your customers? Because it's pretty nebulous. It's got a lot of different things that can. I'll stop rambling. Just for you, when you're talking about context to your customers, how do you define it?
I don't think there's a single answer to that.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got a very high level framework we put in place because I think when you're looking at how you respond to a customer or when you engage a customer, you need some kind of high level context in terms of are they happy with us, annoyed with us, what are they worth to us financially, how engaged they are with us, all that kind of thing. So we've kind of put in place what we call our Elvis framework. Elvis standing for engagement, loyalty, value, influence, and sentiment. And what we look at is every kind of interaction that really the enterprise can absorb in terms of, and you know, Alan, I mean, for years now, it's been possible to analyze voice calls in near real time or after the event in terms of what was the sentiment of the call. You can detect that through, was the customer raising their voice? Were they talking over the agent?
Yes.
And things like that. Or was it relaxed? Or was it, was it not relaxed? And for us, that event would come into Horizon, in terms of anxiety on the call or frustration or anger on the call. And we would ascribe that some points, which would be, in that case, negative sentiment. And what we do is every day, Horizon works out for all these different events, from the call center, from your mobile app, from your website and your web chats, whatever it might be, all those different events in terms of whether they contributed positively or negatively to engagement, loyalty, value, influence, and sentiment. And then you have a framework, because you can say if somebody phones you up, you can, and also we put them into various buckets in terms of their life stage and some kind of persona. So you better, somebody phones up, Alan Quayle phones up, and immediately we can see, well, he's in negative sentiment, which we guessed because there was 3 calls this morning when he was clearly not happy, which might just be because the agent was kind enough to hit the frowny face, or just the fact that the issue was not resolved first time, whatever it might be. And we can combine that negative sentiment with a high value customer in an about to lapse group, or in a new customer group, which is almost equally important in terms of immediately some kind of headline analysis of, do we need to jump on this issue? Do we need to jump on it? Which might actually be which agent answers the call when the next call comes in. So we've put a high level framework around context in terms of life stage analysis and sentiment and so forth, and financial value. I think below that, I'd say we're more dabbling than expert, Alan, in some of the new technologies Google has brought out in its Google Cloud for sentiment, syntax, and context analysis. And we're starting to experiment in terms of putting, interaction data through that. Which again, for us, is just useful segmentation in terms of what people are talking about, how they're talking about it. So you can do then some sort of cluster and cohort analysis and that kind of thing. But I think it comes down to every single business. The first thing they've got to work out is, what are our customers saying about us, and what we're going to say back. And I think that is not always addressable through technology. But I think to not operate in a vacuum is good. Now, some of our customers are very good at that. Krispy Kreme is one of our customers, and they're excellent in terms of knowing what the customers think about them and so forth. And with them, we're doing an awful lot of email at the moment, and that will, I think, change to different channels. We're going to start doing some different stuff with them. I mentioned the Scottish Environment Agency, CPaaS, that we deal with. That's predominantly outbound voice and SMS. You don't want to be notified by email about the fact your house is about to be flooded out, and which comes back to the urgency thing. So I think it's, it varies, but so one of the things we do when we're looking at an organization's strategy towards how it can retain its customers longer and grow their lifetime value is to look at what those communication touch points are, and what they're doing with it right now. And I think a lot of customers are just getting the basics right in terms of building that single customer view and actually trying to rationalize the number of platforms and systems that are doing very, very different things completely independently.
Yes,
because
exactly.
That's the first thing to.
That's it. We have a chatbot framework. Yay! We can reduce the amount of time our agents have to spend dealing with their customers. No,
no. And I tell you what, it annoys me. Bear in mind that I was working on speech technologies back in the early noughties, and actually going back to 89 and 1990 when I was contracting at BT, and I learned and you learned an awful lot around how to build a great bot. Voice technology, it was just a bot you could talk to.
Exactly.
But actually what makes a good dialogue and what makes a bad dialogue in terms of the prompting, all that kind of stuff. Amazing how many people these days are building bad bots. They've forgotten all that knowledge we've developed over the decades because a new breed of developers come along thinking, crikey, bots, that's a new thing. Let's build them from scratch. And
exactly. Let's automate our FAQ.
Yeah, exactly. And I think just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. And I think a lot of what we bring to the party is the technology and the data and the human psychology about when to do it and why, and measuring it, rather than just being a tech fest.
So again, just focusing on the channel, because I know we focus on the context, but across all the channels you work across, what are the most popular and what are some of the, I mean, you've covered some use cases. Do you have any other interesting use cases in terms of how SMS or web or voice are used because of its relevance to the customer?
Yeah, I mean, what I won't do is talk to you about the DEFRA annual pig, sheep and goat survey, because that's actually not that exciting, but it's a great example of actually in that market, all they're trying to do is get farmers to fill out forms electronically rather on paper. And I think there's some fundamental challenges that need to be solved there. That's something we will be looking at about for RCS. One of the most potentially, we can come back to that. We can maybe brainstorm some thoughts there. But I think one of the most successful services we've been running for over 20 years now with Telefonica O2 in the UK, or actually back at the time was BT Cellnet. Is what they call the marketing IVR. And I'll explain to you what it is. If you're a prepay customer, you need to sort of top up your phone or find out what your balance is and buy some more data. Then you've got a couple of ways of doing that. One would be to go to the MyO2 mobile application, where you've got to remember your username and password and log on and wade through pages of stuff. It's a great application and it's doing really well for O2. The second way is to phone 2202, which has a benefit. We answer quickly. You know from your CLI who you are. We're not going to offer you any content or services which would be potentially in breach of data protection regulations. So there's no need to verify your identity. All we do is answer the call, know it's Alan, know what your data balance is. Again, know, for example, whether you are in an about to lapse group or a new customer group, whether you have O2 Travel as a bolt-on, whether you're a member of O2 Priority, what handset you have. Is there a better deal for you available in the marketplace based on your consumption or just what we might want to sell you because you drive, we know you live on a certain street and therefore quite affluent. We can, because O2 looks at your call profile, works out you're a business customer. So we work out all these things about you, all these attributes about you, and then straight away create an IVR, a personalized menu for you, for that call at that point in time. And the first thing might be, we can guess you're phoning to buy some more data because you're pretty much run out. So the first thing is, Alan, do you want some more data? Press 1. When you press 1, we might then try and upsell, do some kind of retention, which actually might be giving you more than you expected you might get. It might actually just be forwarding you onto the retentions team. Or once you've bought your data, that job is out of the way. I think it's always important to, certainly on the voice channel, get down to business quickly. People forget this. And they'll have IVRs like the one we just explained for topping up your balance or whatever. And the first thing we'll say is, have you heard about so-and-so, so-and-so? And do you want to find out? Oh, come on. I want to top up my bloody phone. Get down to business quickly is the first rule on the IVR, on the voice channel.
Exactly.
But once they've done that, maybe then different promotional offers and all the rest of it. And then we combine that with SMS follow-ups and so forth. If someone's expressed interest in a certain OT product or service, follow up with them. You know, and things like that. And then also notify their Marcom's platform of the fact that so-and-so was interested in this one thing, which means you might want to change the hero image on the next email you send to them.
Yeah.
So I think there's some retargeting there and so forth. But as an application, as a channel, it's great because there's no need for identification. That's done automatically through CLI. There's no need for validation. Then the content, the personalized content is delivered rapidly, instantly, just what the customer wants. And then some promotional stuff afterwards. I think that's a great example of a channel working really well.
Yep.
With Krispy Kreme, we mentioned, I think, obviously in loyalty programs, one of the benefits of loyalty programs is to be able to identify the customer when they make a transaction at the point of sale, or ideally when they come in the shop. And I think that's why things like the self-scanners in Waitrose and Asda are becoming so popular, because if the customer comes in and identify through their mobile phone number the fact they're in the shop, have picked up a scanner, you now have an opportunity before they get to the till to send them promotional offers to engage with them. But with Krispy Kreme, once someone gets to the till, again, what we've probably done there is work out it's their birthday, so they can get a free donut or a coffee. And it just gives a great opportunity for the person behind the counter to say, hey, Alan, oh, happy birthday, that donut's on us. Have a good one. So I think, you know, any kind of real-time engagement pleases people.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But in terms of channels, I mean, a lot of our customers, I think they're probably not as adventurous as they would like to be, because I think they're probably still trying to get some of those basics in place.
Exactly.
How to do email right.
Yes.
You know, how to do SMS right.
Yes.
And I wouldn't say, as we mentioned with SEPA, you know, outbound voice is very important to them because of the immediacy of that channel and the amount of information you can convey in that call in a very passive way for the listener.
Exactly.
Because when your house is about to be flooded, the last thing you want to do is delve through pages of information and get to it. What you want is somebody to tell you, it's all right, you haven't got to run yet. No, you know, you can take the sandbags away. So I think there's different channels for different use cases.
Yeah, and these are some really good examples. Of course, we have WhatsApp, we have a lot of these sort of, you know, and you've mentioned social media as well. How do they play in the mix? Because we focused a lot on the basics of voice messaging, email, and that's, you know, as a customer, as a consumer, that's the major channels I see. But you know, there's always this promise in all these sort of, you know, social, you know, and other, you know, sort of app-based communication channels. How do you see? I mean, do you use them? Do they have a specific role? I'm just interested in your view.
I think they do. You know, well, one of our customers, you know, Valero or Texaco in the UK, we're just getting into some push notifications. I mean, it's basic stuff. But again, you know, it's good for them because it's, you know, cheaper than sending a text message. And obviously, you can have some deep links into the app, and we can use that for various different things. I think with social, I mean, you're absolutely right, and we'll come on to RCS in a moment, because you know, this is where, as Joe consumer, we have an expectation of what the capabilities are and how we'd like to communicate with our friends. And in some ways, we don't think of our bank as our friend. We don't think of our telco as our friend. But we do know the channels we like to communicate on, and I think we're seeing lots of interest in terms of businesses wanting to be where their customers are, whether that be on social channels or in messaging apps like WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger and so forth. I think you need to think that through a little bit in terms of, you know, really, does somebody want to engage with their bank in WhatsApp? You know, they tend to think,
I don't. It's Facebook. It's evil. Please don't talk to me on that channel.
Correct. Absolutely. And I think. So I think people are a little bit confused still in terms of what channels are best for for what reasons. But I think there is, there's certainly a lot to talk with all of our customers around what the communication strategy should be.
Yeah.
And whether that even be things like single sign-on with some of
Yes.
those social platforms and so forth.
Yeah.
And just to make that consumer experience a bit more frictionless and
exactly
and appropriate. But I think that's when you get into the fact that even as a marketing manager, I think you're probably thinking, is it appropriate to do it? What's the reaction going to be? And so I think a lot of customers, a lot of organizations, even very mature ones, are still going through that kind of analysis process of what should we be doing.
And it's changing. It's not static. It depends on the segment you're talking to.
Completely.
And again, this whole context. I know, I mean, you've mentioned RCS, and again, I've seen several different projects where they were looking at just using SMS because of its reach rather than RCS. For forms, you've got the link, and then from the link, it goes to the browser. So interested in your perspective around RCS versus using email or SMS with links in there.
I'm be one of the most cynical people you'll speak to about things like this, because you well know from talking to telcos from 20 years ago when they wanted to do this. When we first had in 2007 when it was, and Facebook came on the scene and WhatsApp came on the scene, and my God, they're stealing our revenue. How dare they? How can we compete? How can we make £1 billion and monetize the service? We own the pipes. It should be our domain. And I think, I remember saying to a few people in the telco space who wanted to launch new apps, I said, there's no harm being in the pipe business. Yeah. The only problem with being in the pipe business is when you decide you want to be in the water business.
Yes.
And I think you've got to decide actually what your core remit is. But I think when these apps, these third-party apps, these over-the-top apps started coming out, there was a clamor of activity from lots of telcos, hence the Jane Slees and things like that, to build new value-added products and services. And I know how long it took to bring anything to market, i.e. nothing, really. Yeah. Back in the day, we thought that the savior of the telco industry was going to be using your phone like a walkie-talkie.
Yes.
Remember that use case?
Yeah. So your parents could hear your conversation while you're basically
just what you want. Just what you want. So I think, and because telcos work, in the federated way they do, it's not bringing a consumer app to market. It's all the bloody interconnect with other telcos and so forth to make it ubiquitous across networks and platforms and devices. Exactly. So when I look at RCS, which came around in 2007 or something, and it's still not quite there yet.
Correct.
It's kind of getting there.
Yeah. Yeah.
The time has been soaked up by getting everybody on board with it. But then when you look at it in terms of the consumer proposition, are people going to start using SMS rather than WhatsApp, rather than Facebook Messenger? I can't see it. Yeah. I can't see it. I think the benefit comes from the business side of things, potentially, because some businesses do have a database of SMS numbers. Yeah. And I think therefore a legitimacy to contact someone on a channel with a richer experience.
Yes.
And I think therefore, and to make those engagements more akin to what you can do on Facebook or WhatsApp. And I think even with the Scottish Environment Agency, CEPA, that we deal with, we're having some conversation with them right now around innovation. And I think rather than send somebody a text message with a link to the website, one thing about flood warning dissemination, I think what we learned about working with the police service as well is, and this is an obvious point that's often overlooked, what you don't want to do is send somebody, whether it be an email or a text message or whatever it might be, about something that's happened a long time in the past.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because you might not pick up that email for 2 days. And you go, what? Flood warning now? Really? And of course the event's gone. Yep. So this is why a lot of public sector organizations in particular will drive people with a kind of an outbound nondescript message saying, flood information for the latest, go to this website.
Exactly.
Then you click the link and the website's up to date, real time, the latest. And I think, with things like RCS, there's the potential to kind of bring that together into a single channel and a single integrated experience.
Okay.
Where, rather than clicking on a link to go to a website and log in or whatever it might be, or enter my postcode,
yeah,
we can exchange some kind of device location information, and I can get the very latest on my device here and now in the same place.
exactly.
And I think things like that are potentially very powerful. I think even for DEFRA, in terms of getting, who engage farmers, things like location are very important. And I think being able to, I say, even just exchange some location info, whatever might be useful. I think there's some use cases, Alan, and we're certainly keen to explore it as a channel. Will it take off mainstream? SMS 2.0? I don't know.
Yeah. We'll see.
I think there's probably enough momentum behind it now with Google and so forth. But how are telcos going to monetize it?
Well, they're
not
free
data plans.
Google's made it free. It's just basically it's Google message, because they're trying to basically sort of compete against Facebook and the rest. So it's just there, and you just use it. And because as a developer, I have Dialogflow, I have all this stack of stuff, then it's just easy to use the Google stack. And I don't need to worry about, is it a Vodafone operator? Is it a Telefonica operator? It all just works through Google for that segment that has it enabled on their Android phones. Again, it's segment. So
Google's done a fantastic job about monetizing the telco industry and left telcos in a position where they can't make a bean out of it, probably.
Out of that piece, but let's face it, I pay every month $210 to Verizon and T-Mobile monthly. It's, for what is essentially a subscription service. That's it. It's just the same. It changes slightly depending on whether my wife decided to call Singapore on a mobile phone. Keep asking her not to, but I say this could have cost us like 0.025 cents, and it's costing us $25. Anyway, enough ranting about that. Just drawing it to, and this is something that's come through several times in several conversations, especially like the phone voting. I think was very interesting because that was early days.
It was.
It's around identity verification. I mean, this is a hot area. I mean, we're seeing massive investments, Big ID, Prove Identity, because with the phone number, you have somebody's identity. I mean, you gave it in the IVR example, the marketing IVR, the identity, and in a relatively secure way, especially if it's app access, because then you have the phone, you have a whole host of additional account-related information. So I'm just interested with identity verification, but also just the broader, context you have around identity. Their account, the address, the geodemographic profile around that. How do you see that piece growing over time?
I'm glad you left that question until the end, because I'm not sure I've got a very concrete answer for you. I mean, certainly in terms of what we do, running loyalty programs, a lot of what we do is around collecting customers' identity. So you can collect the data, hold it securely, make it GDPR compliant, all the rest of it, and then utilize it. So identity is important. How you verify that identity, I think more of our customers are looking at the fact that if it's a mobile app, then okay, you have the verification step of fingerprint ID or whatever, and they leave the verification to the mobile device. I think on mobile devices, there's also less chance you're sharing it with somebody else. It's not like your PC that might have multiple logins and so forth. So I think a lot of people leave it to the device, and certainly we at HTK haven't done a great deal around identity verification. Clearly in the e-voting world, that was very different.
Yes.
And a number of layers of that to impose.
It is a dream for me, because I had my first experience of voting by post, and it was civilized. I don't need to go down and wait and queue. I can fill in the forms. I can say, I'm not sure of the policy of this particular, because it's not just, sort of the president and then, sort of Senate and Congress. There's also Board of Education. You vote for those as well. And there your awareness isn't. So then you can go online and you can do some research and you make a far more informed voting decision, because it's rather than the sheet's in front of you, it's your turn, you're in the little booth, you better get those things typed in. And to be able to do it, with your mobile, rather than having to use pieces of paper and fold it up and sign and seal. And believe me, the number of people that don't read the instructions, so they're not folding it over, signing it to prove that they have sealed it and they're authorizing a carrier to deliver it to the voting station, means fail voting there. Well, it's in the app. You can just automate it so it's foolproof. So that for me, I think it is a vision. But anyway, we're getting off the topic.
Off piste a little bit. Well, but it is amazing. It is amazing, for voting.
Yeah.
How we haven't brought that into the 21st century yet.
Yes.
We're still signing pieces of paper and putting a wax rubber seal on it or a bit of blood on your thumbprint. And my goodness,
Yes, I know.
It's amazing.
Well,
but,
we can summarize it all in one word: politics. Is the reason it's remained in the 17th century. But I think, there's so much we can do. But this has been really fun. I mean, for me, I think the most important piece, the phrase that I love, that I've not used, but I will be using now, is context is more important than channel. For me, I think that really does sum up in a lot of your use cases, just the power of understanding the customer at that particular point and giving a timely and relevant interaction that, as you say, puts a smile on their face.
Smiles on faces, put money in the till.
Excellent.
So that's it, Alan. You've summed it up well.
That's great. Thank you so much, Marlon. This was a really fun interview. Thanks so much.
Well, great to catch up again, mate.